So, how do the deaf communicate? There are two main forms of communication that the deaf utilize. The first is sign language. According to Medline Plus, sign language is a complete and complex form of language that uses the combination of hands, facial expressions, and body language. However, the ASL app notes that sign language is not universal, resulting in each country having their own form of sign language. For example, deaf people in the United Kingdom will use BSL or British Sign Language, while deaf Americans in the States will use ASL or American Sign Language. Signing Savvy notes that the difference between ASL and BSL is that ASL uses one-handed finger spelling, while BSL uses a two-handed alphabet. ChiraCom Language Services states that not all deaf Americans will communicate through ASL. Users of ASL range from approximately 100,000 to 2 million. Also, according to ChiraCom Language Services, many adults who become deaf later in life will not use ASL. They may take on other forms of communication that will be discussed later on. In instances when deaf children are born to hearing parents, ASL may not also be utilized. This is due to the fact that 88% of hearing parents will not learn ASL. They will adapt their own form of sign language called home signs. Home signs can become very problematic because these home signs that are established in different households are not understood by those in the deaf community or those who even understand ASL. The second form of communication is lip reading. Lip reading is not necessarily a specific form of communicating, however, it does allow a hearing person to communicate to a deaf person. Certain deaf people, especially those who are born hearing and then become deaf later on in life, choose not to communicate through sign language and will use the technique of lip reading. HearingDogs.org states that lip reading can become very difficult because it requires lots of practice, skill, and most importantly, patience. HearingDogs.org also states that lip readers use a variety of techniques to assist them while lip reading. These techniques allow them to better understand what the person is communicating to them. One technique that is used is understanding the context of the conversation. This can narrow down vocabulary that is relevant to the conversation. A different technique is the knowledge of the American language and its lip patterns, or in a different case, any other language that is being spoken between the two individuals and its lip patterns. Both of these forms of communication, sign language and lip reading, are very important and beneficial to deaf people all across the globe. Sign language and lip reading allows deaf people to communicate in a form that is useful and accessible to them. Now we'll move on to discuss how we can prevent deafness.